안녕하세요, 김창수입니다. 오늘은 블라드녹 위스키 증류소에 왔습니다. 오늘 이 블라드녹의 생산 현장을 둘러보고, 그리고 블라드녹의 마스터 디스틸러인 닉 세비지 박사님과의 인터뷰 시간도 있기 때문에 이 블라드녹의 위스키의 비밀을 한번 파헤쳐 보도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 사실 제 위스키도 갖고 왔거든요. 이 제 위스키를 닉 세비지 아저씨한테 맛을 보여주고 또 평가도 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 가시죠. 자, 안녕하세요. 저는 김창수고요. 오늘은 블라드녹 증류소에서 닉 세비지를 만나서 얘기를 나누고 그의 위스키의 철학에 대해서 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 안녕하세요. 저는 한국에서 위스키 만드는 김창수라고 합니다.
So Nick Savage, Master Distiller and Head of Operations for Bladnoch Distillery. Been in lots of jobs across the industry. Been with Bladnoch for 3 years Master Distiller, making all the whiskey, making the operations run correctly, and hopefully making whiskies that everyone enjoys. Learned a lot about what goes into making a whiskey throughout my career. So the philosophy of making whiskies now at Bladnoch, making a whiskey for everybody, making a whiskey for whatever palate to enjoy. Lots of different whiskies, lots of variety. There's something for everybody, but making it to the right beliefs in how we believe whiskey should be made as well. So basically looking at it from a flavor point of view, but something for everybody.
사실 저는 한국에서 왔는데 한국에서도 위스키 만드는 걸 혹시 알고 계셨습니까?
Not until you guys came. No, that's wrong. So I did know, obviously still in its infancy and still building. And I think, the more it becomes available, the more people like myself can taste it. And I think just because Scotch does what Scotch needs to do, 3 years, old casks, there's an opportunity there for other regions to do what they want to do and do what how they want to make their whiskey as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for Korea to actually, find its own whiskey, not just Scotch, Korean whiskey. So, what we've just been tasting is a pretty good start.
그래서 이제 스코틀랜드뿐만 아니라 전 세계적으로 이제 위스키의 인기가 높아지고 생산도 굉장히 늘어나고 있는데 이렇게 신세계 스코틀랜드가 아닌 다른 나라에서 만들어지는 위스키에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하는지, 그리고 그들이 좀 주로 주장하는 다른 기후에서 오는 빠른 숙성, 요거에 대해서도 또 어떻게 생각하는지 한번.
Yes. So within Scotland, the lowlands and the highlands and the islands, all different climates, but very close together. Temperatures maybe 10 degrees, 11 degrees. Okay, so there's differences, and if we're in here, we could notice them. Scotland to the Caribbean for rum, very different. Scotland to Kentucky, very different. Scotland to Korea, very different. So the climate does have a big effect, and on those global scales has a much bigger effect than just local. So that it will make Korean whiskey, and in the same way there's Caribbean rum and Kentucky bourbon. The climate will affect the efficiency, so to speak, of maturation. Does it improve or detract? We don't know, because faster isn't necessarily better, but the greater angel share, the greater maturation losses, just that one factor will have an impact. So greater maturation losses increase the concentration of the wood extracts. So the ratios of everything inside the cask change just from that one variable. So yes, it will have an impact.
지금 계속 스코틀랜드뿐만 아니라 모든 전 세계에서 위스키 소비 인구가 늘어나고 인기가 있어지는데, 근데 역사적으로 보면 이렇게 위스키 인기가 확 올라가면 어떻게 보면 또 약간 망하는 그런 쇠퇴기가 오는데, 앞으로 이렇게 어떻게 보면 위스키 역사에서 가장 최전성기를 맞고 있는데, 이 시기가 얼마나 지속될 것이며 이 망한 그런 시기가 올 것인지.
In order to make whiskey, whether it's Scotch or Korean or bourbon, you need to have big shoulders. Big shoulders because it might be popular today, and I think the world's very small. So in the 80s, the world was very big. Now the world's very small. So if Scotch doesn't sell in Korea, then we move it to Japan or we move it to German. Okay, so very small, very flexible. If the whole whiskey market was to come down, I don't think that's the case. I think it'll always keep on growing. I think if it was to come down, it will always come back. You've just got to have big shoulders to carry it for many years. So, we're making whiskies today that won't be out for 10, 20, 30 years. We won't be here, but you've got to have the shoulders to kind of hold it and wait and make the decisions when the market's right, when the consumer's right, and when there's the right story to tell. I think Scotch is very good at telling the right stories at the right time, and you've got to make sure that you're not forcing it. And I think there'll always be someone somewhere that wants to drink it. You just got to find them. And I think if you don't distill it today, in 10 years you'll regret it. It's better to have it in a cask and not do anything with it, and the market go down, but keep going, it'll come back. So I think short term, I don't see any issues with the market. Long term, I see it always growing, and I don't see any reason why it should regress anytime soon. Every distillery should have a story. That's probably the main point, and the story should be about the people, why you make the whiskey, who you make it for, and as we started off, the philosophy behind why you make a whiskey. Whether it's a 3-year-old or a 23-year-old, that's just a product. People will buy the whiskey for why you make it, not for how much it is or how old it is. So whether it's a new distillery or an old distillery, as long as the story is there and you believe in that story as a team, I think that's probably the most important feature to have. And whether you can tell that story with a new distillery, you can tell it with an old distillery. You've got to manage those expectations. But I think there's room for everything. You've just got to tell why you make your whiskey. That's the most important thing.
모든 산업에서 이제 AI의 발전과 기술의 발전이 굉장히 화두인데, 이 위스키를 만드는 거에 있어서도 기술의 발전이 어떤 영향을 미칠 것 같은지, 과연 위스키 생산에도 사람 없이, 인간 없이 위스키를 만드는 세상이 올 것인지 궁금하네요.
I think there's a place. And there's a place for it, and there's an inevitability. It is already happening. Okay, so you can't stop it. How we use it is probably more important. And I think whiskey, or Scotch primarily, is expensive, and it's highly demanded because of people make it. I think that's a real key point. And not only so people today, that's been passed down for 200 years. So that for me is why people start to buy the whiskey. That's why we want a Scotch. That's what it's there for. So when I was working on casks and cask science, we looked at a number of different things and robots and technology. But the rule was we can evolve it, but we shouldn't scrap it. We shouldn't replace. So we shouldn't replace the cooper, the stillman, the mashman. We should help them. So we should give them, instead of a hammer, we give them a piece of equipment to drive the hoops on. Therefore they can be a cooper for longer, they can make a more consistent product, they can make a better product. But we never replace them, we always help them. And that was the evolution. So things like AI, I think, we can make an AI whiskey, fine. is it going to demand the same attention as a 200-year-old where it's been passed down? Probably not. So I think we should use these technologies to help the craftsman, not replace them.
Wow.
So I always answer this question with, it depends. I never have one favourite whiskey. I have a number of different whiskies depending on who I'm with, where I am, how hot or cold it is, what food I'm eating, like wines. So if it's quite warm today, I'm actually working on Samsara. So something nice and refreshing but a little bit sweet, fine. Sharing with a few friends, could even have it as a highball, fine, lovely. If it was snowing and really cold and miserable, probably a 19-year-old PX would work great. Just a couple of us and a couple of thoughts from writing things. So it really depends on the occasion, and the feeling is what drives my decision. So, which goes back to why we make whiskies. Something for everybody, but something for all different occasions as well. You know, Christmas time versus summertime. There'll be different whiskies. And that's how I choose whiskies. So, no favourite, but got my go-tos.
약간 제 고민이기도 한데 위스키를 만들다 보면 내 취향에 따라서 이제 좀 만들려고 하는, 혹은 내 취향에 맞는 위스키를 더 좋은 위스키라고 평가를 하게 되고 그쪽으로 가는 경향이 있는데, 닉은 어떻게 보면 위스키를 만들 때, 블렌딩을 할 때 좀 그런 취향에 좀 편승하는 편인지, 아니면 뭐 증류소의 방향성이나 이런 거를 더 집중을 하고 취향은 좀 제쳐놓는지, 그게 궁금합니다.
Always needs to be the style. Okay. And before I came to Bladnoch, I made sure that I liked Bladnoch because I like Macallan and I liked everything else. So before I came here, I had to make sure that I liked Bladnoch, because it's very difficult to do this if you don't like the style of whiskey. So you have to like the style of whiskey. That's the distillery style, because that's been here for 200 years. It doesn't matter about me or you, it matters that that's the style. Which direction you take that and the philosophy is really up to you. And it's not really to make my favourite whiskey, but back to the philosophy. We're trying to create a portfolio that there's something for everybody. If you like gin, you like Vinaya. If you like Macallan 18, you'll like our 19-year-old. If you liked Jack Daniels and Coke, you'll love Leora. So there's something for everybody, something for each occasion. So if somebody doesn't like one of the whiskies, that's okay, no offence. I hope there's something in some part of the portfolio that they do like. So I think you've always got to have the style, and then you've got to have the philosophy. Now the favourite whiskies, when you start to do single casks or waterfall or something like that, that's much smaller scale and much more personal, then you can tell a bit more of a personal story, and that's when people will say, I like Nick's whiskey, I don't like Nick's whiskey. But you wouldn't, you know, Vinaya isn't Nick's whiskey, that's Bladnoch's whiskey. I just happen to be here when it's made. So distillery first, but then the philosophy of why you make whiskey is the most important thing to me, because it's ultimately people who drink it and follow it are the main reason that you're here to do it.
일단 최근에 위스키를 만드는 이 곳이 늘어나면서 많은 좀 젊은이들이나 위스키 팬들이 위스키를 만드는 걸로서의 이제 직업을 좀 궁금해하는데, 이 마스터 디스틸러와 마스터 블렌더의 차이가 무엇이고, 이 디스틸러를 계속 하다 보면 블렌더가 되는 건지, 좀 그런 직업적인 것을 좀 물어보고 싶습니다.
So in Scotch, I think in Korea this is good because two distilleries, you can make your own story. That's a distiller, that's a blender. So you've got the opportunity to do that. So you should take that. Just the titles in Scotch, I can speak from my own experience. They vary in what they mean company to company. So it's not, I went to university and master distiller. It's the job, and the job is got that title. So the master distiller roles that I've done might be called master blender roles in some other companies, and master blender roles might be called master distiller roles in my companies. I think when I look at my roles when I've been master distiller, the master distiller is more of a ultimate custodian. so they can monitor and they can understand everything from the malt all the way to the bottle. They can also understand the brand, the commercials, the storytelling, the packaging, so on and so on. So they understand every bit that goes into the whiskey, including how to manage the stocks and everything that goes into making it sustainable. Whereas a blender has always been the final part of, we will make the whiskies, we'll manage the stocks. They've got backgrounds sometimes, but they're not accountable for the front end sometimes. So that's my kind of interpretation of the titles. I don't put too much weight behind the titles. They're kind of more forward facing. It's much more what you're accountable for. So I think you have to have a role that's accountable for everything, and you have to have roles that are accountable for parts of that story, if that makes sense. Whether they're blenders or distillers, it's up to you.
위스키를 만들 때 흔히들 이제 캐스크가 가장 중요하다라는 얘기를 하는데, 그거에 동의하는지와 캐스크 숙성 단계부터 혹은 그리고 그 전 스피릿을 만드는 단계까지 뭐 위스키에서 가장 중요하게 생각하는 건 뭔지.
I'll be careful. I say both is the answer. Unfortunately. So we could have a virgin oak cask, brand new cask, and we could put it in with grain spirit, very light grain spirit. And the most impactful thing would be the cask, 80-90% of the cask. Which is what Macallan does, which is what a lot of our products do. Kind of 70-80-90% the cask is driving that style of whiskey. But if you go to an Islay, okay, you can put it in any cask, it's still going to be peaty. So distillery. So all depends on the impact of the styles and characters that are coming from the distillery in the cask. So I think overall, if you look at the industry, it'd be 50-50 in terms of the impact of the cask and the distillery style. But depending on what you want to do, you can swing that one way or the other. You can make your distillate very, very strong, powerful, that no cask can outdo, so to speak, or overpower. Or you can make the cask the most powerful thing. So really depends on what you want to do. You can generate flavors from any direction. It's up to you which direction you choose.
지금부터 이제 블라드녹에 대한 질문을 좀 드리려고 하는데요. 블라드녹이 이제 주인이 바뀌었습니다. 근데 또 항상 이제 위스키가 주인이 바뀌거나 뭐 마스터 디스틸러가 바뀌거나 이럴 때마다 위스키 스타일이 변하는 경우도 있고 그걸 유지하려는 경우도 있는데, 블라드녹은 그 과거의 블라드녹의 스타일을 고수를 하려고 하는 건지, 아니면 이제 새로운 스타일로 과거의 색을 지우고 나아가려는 건지, 그 부분이 굉장히 궁금합니다.
No real change is the idea, the principle. But when you have a very, very old distillery with very old equipment, that sometimes generates a certain variability style that we have to manage. But the distillery is built to produce a classic Bladnoch lowland style. And the variability we manage in the stocks, and pointing behind, that's where the stocks are. So ultimately when the old stocks and the new stocks come to a product, nobody should know. And that's what my role would be to do. So the variability you manage in the stocks and what you use when you use it, when you decide to do things. But nobody should notice a change in the 11-year-old or Vinaya or the 14-year-old. No one should notice a change. So if we do our job right, you shouldn't see old and new. It should be Bladnoch. That's the idea.
그 생산할 때 뭐 발효 시간이나 생산 방식도 그대로 유지하고 있는 건지.
Yeah, within reason. Obviously, I think we're slightly shorter on fermentation times, but nothing that affects the style. So we've not gone from 180 hours to 60. We might have gone from 70 to 60 from an operational point of view, but nothing that's going to affect the style. And it was mothballed. It was never high production anyway, so we really made sure that that's the style that we want, and we'll build the distillery to make that style now. So yeah. Should be no variability.
그리고 이제 블라드녹 하면 또 우리나라에서 11년이 되게 인기가 많습니다. 근데 그만큼 호불호도 좀 갈리는 편인데 그 이유가 이제 블라드녹 12년에서 나는 더 많이 나는 뭐 치즈나 뭐 그런 유제품의 향인데 그런 향들은 뭐 의도를 한 건지 아니면 블라드녹만의 특징인지 혹은 이런 향은 어디서 기인하는 건지 궁금합니다.
So the note that I get from 11 is a and maybe there's wording and descriptors, not a language but a descriptors. You know, we've got flavor wheels and how we describe things. So my interpretation of this is when I get the 11, it's a very strong honey note, which comes from the casks and it comes from the warehouse as well. It's like a earthy, honeyed note. Sometimes it can get quite strong, and I think for me that manifests sometimes in this overly sweet, the fermented piece, overly sweet 11, and I think that's where they're talking. Again, without being here, I think you're right. Some people think it's really sweet. Some people think it's almost too sweet, and then that's how they're describing it to you. But I think it's the sweetness, and it's a very, very sweet whiskey. So I think that's where it comes from. So yes, I want it to be sweet.
그리고 최근에 이제 스카치 위스키도 뭐 어느 정도 룰이 좀 바뀌면서 다양한 캐스크를 좀 쓸 수 있게 되었는데 블라드녹은 생각보다 뭐 그나마 와인 캐스크 외에는 특별한 뭐 다른 캐스크를 본 적은 없는데 혹시 뭐 이런 맥주나 데킬라나 뭐 이런 특이한 캐스크들도 쓸 생각이 있는지 계획이 있는지. 네.
So the regulations are good. Right? They give us a framework. Just because something becomes new doesn't mean we'll go buy beer casks and we'll go buy tequila casks. So we do have what I call a treasure chest, which is small trial, 10 casks, 15 casks, 20 casks of different woods, finishes, toasting, charring, whatever it might be, to try things. So we could do a beer cask. There might well be beer casks in there. We'll never, if there are, then they'll come out at some point in time. But go back to the philosophy. If it's written on a label, beer cask, it has to have an impact. It has to change it. That's a beer cask. That's done something. So if we did Vinaya in a beer cask, I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but if we had Vinaya in a beer cask, it would have to move the dial, so as you notice it. Otherwise, we're just putting it on a label. So there's a philosophy. Also has to move it in a positive direction. So it has to make it better, it has to make it more enjoyable, it has to do something different to it in a positive light. So we might try some beer casks, and if they don't work, you'll never hear about them. So just because we can doesn't mean we will, because going back to why people buy the whiskey, they have to know that if Bladnoch say something, then that's not what they're going to do. And I will get a whiskey that's going to be different, and it will have got an impact. So it's the philosophy again, rather than just the rules. But we'll have some fun.
네. 그리고 또 요건 지역적, 아까 살짝 얘기 나오긴 했는데 이제 더 이상 스카치 위스키가 과거처럼 그렇게 지역에 따라서 어떤 제한이나 뭐 원료의 사용이나 뭐 연료의 사용이나 이런 제한이 점점 이제 무의미해지면서 뭐 스카치뿐만 아니라 뭐 전 세계 어느 나라에서도 이제 좀 비슷한 위스키를 만들고 있기도 하고 특히 지역적 스카치 위스키의 지역 5개 구분이 무의미해지는 것 같은데 블라드녹에서 생각하는 이 로우랜드 스타일의 위스키의 특징 그리고 블라드녹도 어떤 로우랜드만의 스타일을 좀 구현하고 싶은지 그리고 로우랜드의 특징이 뭐라고 생각하는지. 네.
I think the Lowland as a region has been unsung. Speyside, Islay, very good at promoting. I think Lowland has got some amazing distilleries and it's almost untapped. So I think there's lots of stories to be told. It's a very big region, which doesn't help geographically. But the light, fruity, floral style that we've got at Bladnoch is a great Lowland style. It doesn't mean it's less flavorful, it just means they're light characteristics. And that's what we're trying to do. And that for me makes what I call an accessible whiskey, which is more, not easy to drink, but more people can have that as a starting whiskey. And then you can take people up through into kind of the more heavy stuff, whether it's big sherries or peated stuff. But we can still do that in the lowland with our casks. So although you've got an accessible distillery and it's a very, very easy whiskey to drink, you've still got the kind of big, rich, luxurious whiskies within the same portfolio. And I think, you know, lowland has probably been unsung, but I think there's a lot of stories to tell. And I think that's where the regions go to. You're right, they might be less impactful in terms of their style, although I think the styles are still there. They're not promoted like that. I think there's a lot of stories. Regions are about the stories about the people, about how this distillery, how, you know, 200 years this has been here. There's a lot of story to tell.
Yeah.
So I think it's important from that point of view.
지금 오늘 제가 만든 위스키 두 종류를 가져와서 맛을 보여드렸는데, 요건 진짜 농담이나 뭐 약간 너무 좋게 얘기하는 거 없이 좀 가감 없이 저한테 이 위스키에 대해서 혹은 저한테 뭔가 해줄 말 좀 주사기.
It's 5 ml every time. When you're doing hundreds, quick. Hundreds like that is quite a long time. So, there we go. There we go. Okay. So you always want me to take nose?
Yeah.
Just give it a thing? Oh, sorry, Korean oak.
Yeah, Korean.
So, I don't know if that translates, kind of chocolates. So the sweet sugars, but in a confectionery, not fruity to a certain extent. So vanillas, toffee, fudge. There's almost a herbal, no? Like an orange peel. It's quite soft for 48%.
Yeah.
And what was the fill?
56.
56. So
yeah.
low strength maturation.
Yeah.
Like a nutmeg, something like that. There's something in there. But very nice. Similar, like I said, accessible, fruity, light. 180 litre
Yeah.
or 100?
Yeah. Both.
Both
Very,
together. Yeah. So 100 litre cask, small cask.
Yeah.
Get more extract faster. Where that's better. So you've got additive, subtractive, and oxidative. Probably more oxidative. Might balance it, round it. It's quite powerful in certain aspects, a little bit dry on the palate. Could round a couple of the kind of sweet confectionery, the herbal note could get rounded a little bit with the oxidation. But very, very strong in the wood. For 16 months, yeah, there's quite a lot of wood. Good. Can I get? We got some Korean oak. You sent me some Korean oak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep touching this. Yeah. So we might take some, but nice. There's a distinct herbal note. And is that the herb? Is that the cask or the spirit?
I think cask 70% and malt 30%.
30%,
Malt
70,
is
30.
very grassy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this one.
Yeah.
So this is Scottish peated malt. Strong peat?
Yeah.
And the malt?
Medium peat? I think medium peat.
Kind of 40, 50?
Yeah, 50, but some blending malt. Yeah. Non-peat malt blending. Yeah. And cask is STR wine cask. I made it. Yeah.
So this is a Richard Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So red wine first,
Yeah.
and then finished.
Red wine first, shaving. White wine second white wine.
Yeah.
And Richard. Yeah. And then whiskey. Mature whiskey.
What oak type?
I think European.
European.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, very, very strong. Very, very dark color from Richard, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a good balance between the peat, the kind of medicinal, hospital germalino, and the wood. So there's a good balance between the two. The wood's bringing a bit of sweetness, probably some raisins, sultanas, some creaminess that starts to come from there. The kind of Christmas cake note, but that's balancing with with the levels of peat, the kind of medicinal note that's coming through, but which is good because a lot of times it's just peat or no peat. So to have a cask and peat is probably about 50-50 in terms of the impact. So that for me is a good starting point. And I prefer a balance of the two rather than just peat. Very nice, very nice.
Thank you. Which is favorite more?
Well, again,
style,
peat and no peat, very difficult to kind of compare the two. To be fair, today I'd go here.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd go here today.
Yeah.
But it's cold outside, so if I was to go in the garden, I'd probably take that one. In here, there's the Korean one. Yeah. Very nice.
자, 오늘 닉 세비지 선생님과 아주 깊은 얘기, 좋은 얘기 많이 나눴는데요. 마지막으로 한국에 정말 블라드녹 팬들이 정말 많이 늘어나고 있는데 이 블라드녹 위스키를 사랑해 주시고 또 닉 세비지의 또 팬들도 있기 때문에 혹시 한마디만 좀 부탁드려도 될까요?
Okay, from a Bladnoch point of view, we know that people hopefully enjoy what we do, and that's the idea. So we'll always try, as long as I'm here, we'll always try and make things that people can enjoy. That's it. We hope you enjoy them. If you don't, that's okay, but don't keep coming. We'll give you more. When we do single casts or waterfalls or dragon series, we'll try and tell stories, and I think that's important. So we'll always try and make something for everybody, and I think that's a good way of looking at things, because we want to make a whiskey. When we drink whiskey, we drink it because we're having fun, or we're sad, or we're happy, or we're thinking. There's always a moment or a memory where that's when we had a whiskey. You know, today, this will be, you'll remember it here now, right? You remember doing this because we when you drink this. So it's about creating memories. It's about understanding why we drink whiskey, and that's why we do it. For me, I'm amazed that people even know me in Korea. I think it was there's a story about the Waterfall, and one of our private cask owners found a bottle of Waterfall, which is a distillery exclusive, 1,000 bottles. You have to come to the distillery, and they found a bottle in a bar in Korea. I can't remember, I can find the name of the bar, but they found it in a bar in Korea. And they told the story of the barman did the hand movements that I do, and Waterfall, you explain it by, you take it from one cask to another cask, to another cask, to another cask. And apparently the barman in Korea was explaining Waterfall and did this. So I think things like that are really cool, and I love hearing things like that. And it doesn't matter about language or whiskies, it just shows you that something as simple as that can explain it, and I thought that was really cool. So I hope one day I can come and do this in person and enjoy whiskies, you know, because that's what I'm here to do as well. So Bladnoch or me, you know, I think as long as everyone's having fun, that's what we're here to do. So thank you for drinking it and enjoying it.
자, 그러면은 이것으로 닉 선생님의 인터뷰를 마치도록 하겠습니다. 언젠간 꼭 한국으로 한번 초대를 꼭 해서 또 한국에 계신 팬들과 함께 할 수 있는 시간도 기대를 해보겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 사실 이 위스키를 업으로 삼고 나서 사람들이 뭐 그런 얘기 많이 해요. 위스키 뭐 많이 먹어서 좋겠다, 많이 먹을 수 있어서 좋겠다, 뭐 이런 얘기도 많이 하는데, 근데 사실 위스키는 매니아 시절, 위스키 애호가 시절, 이 위스키를 일로 삼지 않았을 때가 더 많이 먹었던 것 같아요. 이게 지금 최근에도 뭐 정말 많은 종류의 위스키를 테이스팅을 하고 먹지만은 사실 어느 한 위스키도 편하게 마시기는 좀 어려운 것 같아요. 이 위스키를 먹다 보면 이게 어떻게 보면 이거는 어떤 위스키고 뭐 어떻게 만들어졌고 뭐 뭐가 부족하고 뭐가 좋고 이런 거를 먼저 생각을 하게 되니까 옛날처럼 위스키를 이렇게 즐기면서 먹을 수는 없는 약간 그런 아이러니? 위스키가 정말 좋아서 여기까지 왔지만 좋아하는 정도는 좀 어쩔 수 없이 줄어들게 되는 그런 아이러니함이 있고, 오늘도 수많은 위스키를 테이스팅하고 있습니다. 사실 이 블라드녹 같은 경우는 최근에 주인이 바뀌었죠. 주인이 바뀌었고, 옛날에는 뭐 재정적으로 어렵고 그러다가 주인이 바뀌면서 그리고 뭐 스카치 위스키 업계 스타 디스틸러 닉 세비지도 영입하고 하면서 최근에 굉장히 급부상하고 있는 증류소고, 그리고 굉장히 뭐 브랜딩이나 뭐 맛 또한 뭐 빠지지 않고 정말 앞으로 미래가 정말 기대되는 위스키 증류소죠. 사실 제가 블라드녹 위스키에 대해서는 옛날부터 얘기를 좀 많이 했습니다. 근데 그때는 정말 제가 뭐 그렇게 뭐 제 취향도 아니었고, 그러다 보니까 뭐 사실 뭐 저도 솔직하게 좋은 얘기를 한 적은 없는데, 최근에 이제 블라드녹 같은 경우는 정말 많이 바뀌었어요. 정말 많이 바뀌었고, 특히 뭐 정말 뭐 최근 들어서는 정말 다른 여타 뭐 유명 위스키라 견져도 손색이 없는 그런 위스키로 점점 변해가고 있다는 게 좀 느껴져서 정말 뭐 블라드녹을 뭐 수입하고 뭐 블라드녹을 뭐 이렇게 소개할 수 있어서 되게 좋은 경험이고, 뭐 굉장히 기쁨 그리고 뿌듯함 뭐 이런 게 있는 것 같습니다. 블라드녹은 뭐 여러분들이 워낙 좋아하시는 14년 그리고 뭐 19년 쉐리 캐스크 정말 맛이 있죠. 네, 그것뿐만 아니라 이제 11년 버번 배럴 캐스크에서 오는 그런 또 다른 개성 뭐 이런 것도 좋아하고, 뭐 특히 블라드녹 오피셜 이제 비나야 같은 경우는 정말 퍼스트 필 캐스크만 써서 정말 뭐 숙성이 길지 않은 나스 제품이지만 정말 뭐 캐스크 맛도 뭐 다른 오피셜에 비해 뒤떨어지지 않고 오히려 더 좋은 그런 좋은 오피셜이죠. 뭐 오늘 블라드녹 증류소를 돌아보면서 뭐 얘기도 많이 들었지만은 블라드녹에서는 퍼스필이랑 세컨드필 캐스크까지만 쓴다라는 원칙을 정해놓고 좋은 캐스크만 쓰는 거죠. 그래서 정말 좋은 캐스크만 쓰고, 나머지 2번 숙성한 캐스크들은 그럼 어떻게 하냐 물어봤더니 대형 큰 위스키 회사에 다시 판다고 낸다라고 이렇게 말을 하더라고요. 그래서 뭐 요새 여러분들이 매니아들이 좋아하는 뭐 이런 캐스크 밸런스 좋고 캐스크 느낌 진한 뭐 이런 위스키의 어떤 대표가 블라드녹이 아닐까 싶습니다. 그리고 뭐 기존에도 있던 뭐 증류소를 인수를 해서 새롭게 나가고 있는 거기 때문에 뭐 기존 고수성 라인도 탄탄하고 뭐 이런 미들 라인도 지금 굉장히 탄탄하게 다져져 있는 증류소라서 굉장히 뭐 기대가 되는 증류소입니다. 사실 뭐 위스키를 만드는 것뿐만 아니라 위스키를 마시는 것도 제 큰 일입니다. 어떤 좋은 위스키, 해외에 어떤 맛있는 위스키가 있을까, 어떤 더 새로운 위스키가 나왔을까, 그거를 찾아서 여러분들에게 소개하는 것도 제가 생각하는 큰 일이라고 생각을 하고요. 그래서 뭐 새로운 위스키 나왔다, 혹은 뭐 새로운 위스키가 뭐 있다라고 하면은 최대한 맛을 보고 가격이 맞고 여러분들한테 합리적인 가격으로 소개를 해드릴 수 있으면은 그런 위스키를 들여와서 여러분들에게 전파하는 것도, 그것도 사실은 제가 할 일이라고 생각을 하고요. 뭐 예전에도 좀 말씀을 드렸지만 위스키 만드는 것뿐만 아니라 우리나라에도 독립병의 위스키가 있었으면 좋겠다. 우리나라도 이 외국에서 있는 수많은 그런 독립병의 위스키처럼 개성 강한 위스키들을 좀 편하게 먹고 싶다라는 그런 생각에서 시작한 게 위스키 수입과 독립병의 위스키이기 때문에 그래서 뭐 위스키 만드는 것뿐만 아니라 이렇게 위스키를 들여와서 좋은 위스키들을 소개하고 여러분들한테 이제 편하게 사서 드실 수 있게 좋은 양질의 위스키를 소개하는 것도 우리나라 위스키의 발전, 우리나라 여러분들의 위스키 문화를 더 즐기기 위한 그런 방법이지 않을까 생각을 하고 있고요.